In this video, we will show you the 11th century. The 11th century is considered as a starting point of the High Middle Ages. This period had so many history-changing events, as we will soon discuss. So here is what we're gonna do. We're gonna briefly look at the world map in 1080, analyzing all the players on the world stage. Then we're gonna go over to the list of things and events which occurred one by one and all the way until the end of the 11th century and the beginning of the 12th century, starting from the west and going slowly to the east. Starting from the Iberian Peninsula. Now this might surprise some people who are unaware with this part of the history, but Spain, or most of it anyway, used to be under the Islamic rule. That's a big part of European continent that was under Muslim rule. That right there is the Caliphate of Cordoba, or Al-Andalus, name of the Muslim Spain. Muslims invaded Spain in 711, and after about 7 or 8 years perhaps, they brought almost all of the peninsula under their reign. Now it's a bit too many details to talk about right now, but essentially this whole region used to belong to a wider Islamic empire which covered most of the Middle East and North Africa. Now this empire collapsed when its ruling dynasty was overthrown and killed off in a civil war. Well, not all of them. One Abdul Rahman survived. He fled his capital in Baghdad and established his state in Spain here and refused to submit to the new dynasty, which ruled back in the Middle East. Therefore, that's how we have an independent Muslim state here in Spain. Now up to the north. There are the Catholic kingdoms, which are resisting Muslims down south. They are Galicia, Portugal, Leon, Castile, and Navarre, and a bunch of tiny countries here, over whom France holds suzerainty. These Christian kingdoms developed out of the Kingdom of Asturias. If you remember, I mentioned not all of the Iberian Peninsula had fallen to Muslims. Out of this free land, kings of Asturias extended their domains, and eventually their kingdom was divided into multiple statelets we see now. Moving on to the Western Europe, we can see that it is divided between two great realms, Kingdom of France and the Kingdom of the Germans, whose kings recently in 962 AD acquired the title of Holy Roman Emperors after they significantly expanded their realm to include, as you can see here, Kingdom of Italy and the regions of modern-day Austria. France in this period was ruled by the new Capetian dynasty, and the kingdom itself was practically a formality, as the real power was held by powerful territorial landholders, while the king himself only directly ruled over a tiny domain around Paris, and had no control over his vassals. Also note that the Kingdom of Burgundy, or Arlat, while it was in theory subject to Holy Roman Emperors, it was de facto independent. On the southernmost edges of the German Empire, the Pope rules over central Italy, having his territory enlarged by the donation of Charlemagne in 781. The Pope is an immensely powerful and influential person in the Middle Ages. Down south, various small kingdoms have declared themselves independent and are tied in a struggle for power. On the southernmost edges of the Italian peninsula, Byzantines still cling on to what little holdings they had in Italy. Know that the Byzantines ruled all of Italy and North Africa at one point, and were at this point a rump state. Sardinia is split between 4 tiny kingdoms, which were involuntarily separated from the Byzantines, and the Sicily is a Muslim emirate, yet another obscure part of Muslim history in Europe. Before we move on to further east, let us jump back north for a second, as we appear to have missed the good old Britain. Look at this. England stands proud, yet believe me, this England is relatively a new kingdom on the map of Europe. For if you roll the clock just 70 years back, England would not exist. It would be split between lots of smaller kingdoms, and the Danish invasion, during which Danes controlled more than half of England. One of those smaller Saxon kingdoms, Wessex, united the other English kingdoms and pushed the Danes back and united the whole of England in 927. Wales is ruled by many tiny kingdoms and principalities who are warring with each other, same in Ireland, and Scotland in the north stands united. Between England and Scotland lies Strathclyde and Northumbria, a battleground over which the two realms to clash. A quick glance at Scandinavia shows that the kingdoms of Sweden and Norway are slowly gaining shapes out of many smaller Scandinavian kingdoms. But still, those same small states dot the peninsula, and it would be some time until the power would be centralized around Oslo and Stockholm. Denmark stands united as the most powerful Norse kingdom, having holdings in Norway, Sweden, Mecklenburg, and frequently projecting its power into England, occasionally forcing Norway to become its vassal. On to the Eastern Europe, Poland stands as a political entity, although no clear sources remain, which allow us to know just how cohesive this kingdom was. The area between them and the Germans is inhabited by smaller West Slavic tribes, and over this region, Poles and Germans regularly fight over. Poland is in an uneasy relationship with the ever-growing German realm. To their southern border is Bohemia, who Przemysl rulers hold a difficult relationship with the German Empire. They are the vassals of the emperor, yet they maintain a large amount of autonomy. In the Carpathian Basin, the Hungarian Principality stands tall, having conquered the area some 100 years ago, under their beloved King Arpad. And having projected their power all over Europe, Hungarians have forged a reputation as brutal and fearsome warriors. This year, we're in 1080, is quite opportune as well, as it is the year when Saint Stephen was crowned as the King of Hungary, and when his realm became a Catholic kingdom recognized by the Pope. In Western Balkans, South Slavs have formed their kingdoms. Yet further south, Bulgaria and Byzantium are embroiled in a bitter, devastating conflict, a war that started some 30 years ago. Bulgaria is on the losing side by the looks of it, for despite their victories, their inevitable end seems to draw near. In the Byzantium itself, despite the constant war, the economy seems to be booming. Wars against the Muslims and Slavs are going well. Cities are expanding and growing. The military is getting stronger. The empire is attacked by its enemies from all sides. In the Balkans, it wages brutal wars with the southern Slavs. From the north, across the sea, the Rus are launching raids into their shores. In the east, they struggle against their Islamic enemies. Their holdings in Italy are frequently under attack from both the Muslims and Western Christians alike. Yet the empire always comes on top somehow. Will their luck last much longer? Jump a bit north, and the largest realm in Europe, Kievan Rus, the early East Slav kingdom, looms over their Turkic enemies, having devastated the once mighty Khazar Empire and keeping the Pechenegs in check. Oh, how the tables have turned. Just 150 years back, it was the Khazars and other Turks that imposed their will on the Slavs. Before the move further east, let us not forget about Africa. Looking at Morocco here, just a few years back it was ruled by the Idrisid kings. Yet their power was lessened in the last century, falling further under the Fatimids and being deposed by the Cordobans in 985, just 15 years ago. We can assume that the Muslim state in Spain maintained some form of loose control over Morocco around this time. In Algeria, Zirids, vassals of the Fatimid Empire, made their kingdoms autonomous, as we will later see, fully independent. Further south, below the West Sahara, many African empires and civilizations dot the landscape. To the east, through the eastern Sahel basin, many East African kingdoms exist. Of these, the most notable is Ethiopia under the Zagwe dynasty. When it comes to Middle East, a familiar picture for those who are familiar with the history of the region, Middle East is divided between the illustrious Buyid dynasty and the famous Fatimid Caliphate. The Fatimid Sultans claim descent from Fatima, a beloved and venerated figure in Islam, daughter to the Prophet Muhammad, and they are aptly named after her. Starting out in Tunis, they conquered Egypt, founding the city of Cairo, which remains the center and capital of Egypt to this very day. Then southern Syria, Hejaz, and Arabia, establishing a vast empire. Buyids are a high point in Persian history, as they are the first native ethnic Iranian dynasty to hold power over all of Iran after the long Arabian rule of the region. They quickly established a control of the Iranian plateau and moved in and conquered Iraq. They obviously held Iranian territories close to heart, for even though they were Muslim, they revived many practices of the Sassanid Empire, even taking the title of Shahanshah for themselves. Across the border, a powerful Turkish dynasty, the Ghaznavids, carved their kingdom out of the remains of the post-Arabic Iran. Onto the Indian subcontinent, two powerful dynasties have risen, Western Chalukya Empire and the famous Cholas. Cholas would go on to change the history of the surrounding regions dramatically. In the northern part of India, no imperial dynasty fills the traditional role of India's unifiers, for in their place, many small Hindu kingdoms dot the political landscape. The Eurasian steppe. Various Turkic khanates exist alongside each other. Moving on to East Asia, China. While it looks fine now, just came out of a devastating period of disunity, a common occurrence in Chinese history actually. This is the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period, over which multiple regimes fought for control of China. One of these, the Song dynasty, dominated all others and established a unified China once more. The great Liao dynasty remains in the north, a state of Khitan people, who are considered as predecessors to the Mongols, proto-Mongols if you will. Next up, Korean Peninsula. Strange seeing it united, isn't it? Well, in a period mirroring the aforementioned 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period in China, Korea went through their own period of disunity. The later 3 kingdoms period saw 3 small Korean states fighting over the land. Kingdom of Goguryeo vanquished all others and united Korea once again. Goryeo became the name of the kingdom, and its basis for the English name for the country, Korea. Just over the Korean Strait, Japan stands as a unified albeit decentralized empire. Having secured their northern border, the court, the emperor, is inwardly focused, developing complex arts and aristocratic culture. Finally, moving south, Vietnam, which became independent after many centuries of Chinese rule. Further south, Kingdom of Lao, a pre-Thai civilization. Next to it, Khmer Empire, which is experiencing a period of great strength. And last on our list, the Srivijaya Empire, first unified kingdom to control the Indonesian archipelago, a thalassocracy. They dominated trading routes with their powerful navy, having control of some of the most important trading passages. They are extremely rich and prestigious. So many players on the world stage. Who will survive and thrive, and who will fall and be forgotten? Stay tuned for the next part, because we will go over the first half of the 11th century.